You are listening to the podcast Women Ending War, where you will hear the voices of Israeli and Palestinian women dedicating their lives to creating a new reality in this land. Welcome. Thanks for joining us. Salam alaikum, Eva, my
Alaikum
beautiful friend.
salam. Shalom aleichem, Ilana. Good to see you.
Nice to see you also. How are things over there in Costa Rica?
Good, sunny,
Sunny.
beautiful.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
good.
calm
And
and
how
peaceful.
calm and peaceful. Nice. And how is your Ramadan and your Eid?
Ramadan was good. Pretty challenging to do it alone here without the family and friends.
Mm,
It's not really in the culture, I would say, to do Ramadan here, and I don't have any other Palestinian or Muslim friends around.
oh,
But it was interesting because I haven't done Ramadan for over, I think, 14 or 16 years. And this year I was like, I really wanted to connect to that field of fasting, especially that I was doing 5 days fasting before Ramadan.
oh,
And it wasn't planned. I did 5-day water fasting.
oh, like a cleanse kind of thing?
Cleanse, but also finding clarity. It was just after my trip in Palestine and Israel. And I just felt like for me, fasting is really a time where I can just focus on my feeling and my thought process and with clarity without bothering with like preparing food, eating, digesting, all the activities around food. I find like it takes a lot of our time, and so when I
That's
want to
true.
have clarity, I just don't eat, and it feels so good. I really feel good when I fast. I'm like, yeah, of course, light being, we don't need food, we only need food to enjoy life. So for me, food is enjoyable. And so I did this 5 days fasting, and I had really a lot of clarity around peace activation, around the work that I do in the region. And then Ramadan was coming. I'm like, oh, I should just like continue with Ramadan and try that again. But it's just different because it's from sunrise to sunset. And then usually people eat all night long. And then they just like switch the time of Ramadan from daylight to nightlight. And so nightlife become very active. So obviously here I didn't switch it. I just kept it from sunrise to sunset. And I would have a small meal and then just go to sleep because also here we sleep very early, like after sunset. So for me, just like it brought back the origin of why do we fast actually? Why do all this religion have these spiritual practices of fasting?
Right.
And for me, it's to find clarity, to understand, to connect back to our being of light and the divinity within us, and be able to listen on a deeper level. And the listening is coming from within of reflection and observation. So there's not much busyness, I would say. And I just feel like right now with all the chaos and
Yeah.
genocide and war and everything that's happening,
Yeah.
whether it's in our country or in the States or elsewhere, there's so much noise. And to find our center right now, to be present, I feel is an act of resistance.
Oh, interesting. Like to be able to stay balanced and to stay like within yourself and loyal. It's so funny because I was thinking the same thing. Not funny and like funny, but like
Yeah.
interesting that I was also thinking about how all three major religions have this fasting element.
Mhm. Yeah.
You know, I don't
Yeah.
like fasting personally. It's like it
Mhm.
feels it's like it's hard for me.
Mhm.
Um but it is interesting not only that they all do the fasting and also that all three religions are in the middle of or just in this holiday season now there's Ramadan and Passover and Easter like all like now.
Mhm.
And it's so when you said before that for you the holiday means so much more when you're with your people.
Mhm.
I think about this often, how like all the religions mostly want the same things.
Yes.
Like you want some time for spiritual connection, but also community, family, getting together and being with people you love. That's really,
Mhm.
I feel like, at the core, what so much of religions are really about is about helping people connect and have
Mhm.
joy, and just do joyful things. We have, I thought about this a lot actually when we did our podcast episode with Amira in
Mhm.
Bethlehem. There was a moment when we were sitting there with Amira, and it was just the three of us, and there was this one where she was talking about something else she had. I didn't even remember, I don't even remember exactly what she was talking about, but all of us were nodding. Like all three of us were sitting there nodding, and she was talking about peace and the work of women and
I
nonviolence and
think
all of
it
that.
relates, yeah. I think beyond religion, religion come to answer a need that the people have. So I think all people, we all, regardless of our identities and religion and background and ethnicities, we all want the same thing. We want connection,
Yeah,
we want love, we want belonging,
yeah,
and that's what the religion build on. So they build
yeah,
on like the sense of connection and belonging for people.
yeah,
But then the problem is like if I belong to that, then I don't belong to that, and that's I think where the issue is. And it's
yeah,
for me, I was like trying to explain to my kids like what is Eid or why am I doing Ramadan. And on the 21st of March there was also Mother's Day in Palestine and in the Arab world, and I was also, yeah, we're celebrating Mother's Day in Costa Rica. Everybody was like, and they had to explain why are they celebrating Mother's Day on on a Friday on the 21st of March, which is also the equinox. And for me,
yes,
what I take out of it, including Passover and Pesach and Mother's Day and all these different rituals. This is what they are. They are rituals around Mother Earth. And of course, in Palestine, it would be Mother's Day. In Palestine and the Arab world, it would be Mother's Day on the day of the equinox because it's a celebration of the Mother Earth as such, not necessarily Mother the human. And I find like a lot of this ritual and spiritual practices are practices that were inherited from the goddess and that were banished by the patriarchy.
oh,
And
interesting.
so I really push it further because for me, if you look at it, it's really we have three major religions that are very patriarchal and are setting the tone for how the mother and the feminine is absent. It doesn't make sense. Like, I'm
Mm,
sorry for all these people. Like, it doesn't make sense. And so, what makes sense is that we have humanity in these two beautiful faces of a man and a woman. So, it doesn't make sense that, one gender will be dominating another gender within a certain religion,
yeah,
or that one gender would be born out of one another gender because
yeah,
that's what God decided. It's just like, for
yeah.
me, it never made sense, even when I was growing up in Israel. And I'm wondering if the new what we are facing right now in the midst of all this chaos and uncertainty, I'm wondering if it's not the coming back of the mother, of
Mm,
the real mother, of the
mm,
feminine, and of
mm.
the feminine way, not necessarily the feminine way as woman per se, but as feminine in the man and in the woman that are collaborating right now to bring an end to the madness that we're living.
That's so interesting because I do feel like so much of this work about wanting to create a different reality, wanting to get rid of all of this violence is intricately connected to breaking the patriarchy,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
so
I
much,
agree.
and a lot of it also is, I feel like you're talking to me as a Jewish woman, how I'm trying to do this work vis-a-vis my own people, right? I'm trying to have a conversation with the culture that I come from, the religion that I come from, where I'm trying to say to my own religion and my own culture, no, this is not what Judaism is supposed to be. This is
Mhm,
not what spirituality is supposed to be. This is not what righteousness is. It's not
mhm,
goodness and righteousness and spirituality. It's not Torah if it's all of this killing and
mhm,
violence. If we're doing all of this killing and violence, I'm trying to say, I'm trying to like reclaim my own religion. Also, exactly what you're describing, it's so interesting. I'm
mhm,
trying to say, and maybe I'm trying to say, no, I don't want this religion rooted in the violence and the patriarchy, which, as you say, are just so connected. I want
mhm,
us to go back to those origins, those
mhm,
spiritual origins of the purpose of religion is peace and
mhm.
spirituality and connection and humanity and
And
compassion.
nurturing. I find like
Yes.
we eliminated nurturing in religion, but also in all of our interaction. We don't nurture each other anymore.
Mhm.
We take, we grab, we don't nurture. And I find like right now with everything that's happening, like we're celebrating ritual that have or stories that were created in the past to justify violence in the present. this
Right.
doesn't go anywhere. Like,
Right.
I was just talking with a friend in Jerusalem, and I said, "So how was the Eid for you?" And she's like, "There was no Eid. How can you say Eid Mubarak when like there was the three sisters that were dressed beautifully,
Right.
holding the gift of the Eid, and they died. They were killed,
I
you
saw
know."
that.
And so
Yeah.
there's all these images, and so it's just like counting how many people are dying today, how many people more than dying are killed
Yeah.
purposefully today. And I
Yeah.
think it's like this killing, purposeful killing, is just
Yeah.
heartbreaking. But beyond that, is really is like, how did we lose our sovereignty? How on earth did we uh, can we accept? We don't even accept it, like, because there's a lot of people in Israel, in Palestine, in different places in the world that are against this, that want this to stop. And for me, the question is like, if so many people want this to stop, how is it that it's not stopping? How is
Mm.
it that we're still facing it day in, day in, day in? Whether it's in Gaza, whether it's in the West Bank, everywhere we're going, there's like this killing. How are we still justifying this?
We are very removed. I mean, I feel like a lot of it has to do with the way we're socialized. I've talked about this a lot, the way we're socialized and the way, our cultures dehumanize the others. They justify the dehumanization. There's a lot of that, and it's hard. It takes work. It takes actual work to to counter that. It takes a lot of work to talk back to your culture. That's what I'm really working so hard to do, is to talk back to your culture. But to talk back to your culture means breaking a lot of things that you consider sacred, right? The connections with your family and your history and your community and your texts and your rituals, right? So to come up against that and to say, hey, wait a second, maybe all of that is causing us to do some really terrible things. The risk is like, oh no, am I going to lose all those things that are sacred to me? So that's why people are like resistant. Like they hang on. You're hanging on really tight to the narratives that you were taught because you're afraid of losing something. You're afraid if you let go, then you're going to lose this thing. And so we have to figure out a way to like hang on to the great parts of the religion where we have, you know, culture, music, ritual, text, but not all of that violence. Not all of the violence and the dehumanization and the ownership and needing to control others. I mean, so much of the patriarchy has to do with controlling others and needing others to like submit to. And we got to let go of all of it. See, that's also scary for some people. For some people, letting go of control is also scary. For a lot of people in power, letting go of control is like never, you know.
Definitely, that's not where it's going to come from. I don't think that
Yeah,
the change is going to come from people in power. When you are in
right.
power, you want to stay in power, and you're going to make sure
Exactly.
that the power, the seat where you're seated, is going to stay warm. But I think
Yes.
the change will come from people that are manipulated and are being used to fuel this violence. And
Mm.
that's where, for me, that's what the peace activation is about. It's really, are we able to awaken? Are we able to ignite our fire and say, hey, stop. This is not acceptable for me. That's not what I signed up for. And so
Mm.
maybe you're warm in your seat in power, but I'm here suffering and I'm
Mm.
reliving traumas and I'm participating in something that doesn't speak to me anymore.
Yeah.
And we're selling this killing in the name of security. There's no security when you kill someone else. At some point,
Right.
there's someone else or generation, even generation later. It's not going to
Yes.
happen now, but it's
Right.
like the payback check is going to arrive and then
Yeah.
it's going to be very costly. And so for me,
Yeah.
what you're speaking to a specific quality and values, which is courage. I
Mm.
think we've lost the courage to face our shadows and to face the other that is not in agreement. And I think there's something about the courage of being oneself and touching the sacred cows in your religion or in your culture or in anything else, even in your work. And this courage is a special quality that is cultivated when you know yourself, when you understand where you're coming from, when you dealt with your trauma, when you have activated peace inside of you, and you know this is you being in integrity with your soul.
Mm.
That's non negotiable. And I think that's what I really appreciate about what you're doing. because
Mm.
we see it as a step that you take, a courageous step that you take that is very, very challenging for you, whether it's with your family or with your community. But at the same time, there's something that comes from inside of you that say, no, I will not, I will speak up, I will not shut up.
Mm.
And I think that's something also for me, it's the courage. And the same for Amira, all these people that we've spoken to, all these people have this quality of courage, of like, I will speak truth to power. I will try my best to move beyond this manipulation of stories and connect to the other on a human values, on human shared commitment, whether it's the people, the two women working on nonviolent communication or negotiation or the civilian protection, like all these women we've interviewed, I think what stands out is this quality of courage and integrity in their action. And I think that's what Women Ending War podcast has been for me. It's like, how can we show past this um, richness of activities, of good news, really good news? Because what we're hearing from the media and social media is that Israeli and Palestinian are hating each other and are fighting each other, and there's no way, this is too complicated to solve. We showed in several discussion actually that it's not too complicated to solve. There's actually partner for peace. There's actually several options for solution, not only one. There's like, we had like at least 3 or 4 podcasts on like what could be a possible solution. We didn't say this is the solution, but this could be a possible solution. And I think right now in this discourse of chaos and uncertainty and all that's happening is like, in terms of can peace be possible or not, I think that we have a clear answer. Peace is possible. The willingness, the political willingness, is not there, and that's different. So this distinction between, there are solutions, there's alternative, there are actually even partners, there's actually a woman and organization working together, but there's no willingness to hone that. There's no willingness to make that a step towards a solution, towards stopping the violence, towards living together. And I think that's a key point. At least that's what I'm taking in from the various conversations that we've had.
Yeah, we have had a lot of people talking about solutions and their work for solutions so much,
Mhm.
And one of the most striking interviews we did, was back in season one, that
Mhm.
sticks with me, was our first interview with Naveen
Mhm.
Sanduka of Olmap.
Yes.
I interviewed her again
Mhm.
during Ramadan just now, because they just launched this whole women's leadership network,
Mhm.
which is, which you're going to speak at, right?
Yeah.
They're having you in to do the trauma. Yeah, she told me about it. They're really excited to have you because as soon as she said, "Oh, we're going to do a session on trauma focused," and I said, "Oh, that's Eva's thing." She goes, "Oh yeah, we're bringing Eva. She's amazing," and all of that. So we had that
Mhm.
conversation. Anyway, so the first time that we interviewed Naveen, and
Mhm.
she said, "We are a coalition of 164 organizations working on partnership and solutions." it
Mhm.
was like it was like a blow me away kind of thing,
Mhm.
because I'm all the time, I have chatter all the time of people saying there are no partners, no partners, no solutions, no partners, no partners. So
Mhm.
I cite her all the time. I share links to Allmap all the time. Anytime somebody says there are no partners, I share, "Hey, watch Naveen, look at Allmap," and then when I
Mhm.
interviewed her again, she said, "Oh yeah, now we're up to 170 organizations,"
Yeah, I was
which
just
is,
about to say they're
yeah,
170 now, which is
yeah, it
amazing. It
just,
just showed the willingness of people on the ground to actually work for peace. And I think that's really important to highlight.
yeah. Yeah, it really is very. When people ask me, we also like to ask people what brings them hope, right? And so
Yes.
when people ask me what brings me hope, I'm thinking all these women that I'm talking to.
Hmm.
There is so much. Even, I just want to tell you, the people in the studio, the tech
Hmm.
people on the side, the other day, some people in the office space there came in to hear the interview, because they were like, they don't know this.
Yeah.
Like, there are so many people who just don't know that this is out there, and
Yeah.
every time they realize that there are like great people doing great work in
Mhm.
ways that are not only unseen, but that our leadership wants us to not see.
Yeah.
Our
Yeah.
leadership is trying to disempower, to threaten,
Absolutely. Yeah.
all kinds of threats,
Yeah.
but this, but and yet, and yet she persisted. Nevertheless, she persisted. That's
Yeah.
they're still doing it. The women are still doing it, and I don't, and men. So that gives me like a lot of hope. That really gives me a lot of sources for optimism.
Absolutely. And you know what? Hope is an action. That's what we say in at Peace
Right.
Activation. Hope
Right.
is an action that we take, even if it's a
Hmm.
small step. Take it, whether it's internally or externally. When we take an action, that's what feeds back the hope that we have. And I feel like that's why I say, like, presence right now is an act of resistance. Being hopeful is an act of resistance. It's
Yes.
radical right now when
Yes.
everybody's depressed and everybody feels like helpless and powerless and think there's
Yeah.
nothing else to do, and there's someone up there that is deciding over our fate. No, 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 we have something to do. And the beauty of it is that that's something. I'm not going to define it for you. You're going to define it for yourself. I'm going to define what this something is for me. And each one of us, if each one of us is listening internally to what is this something that would make hope an action, a daily action that we can take, that would give us a bit more of this power, I think we will outrule all this madness. I really
Mm.
believe so.
Mm.
Or I
Inshallah.
choose to believe so, let's say.
You
It is
choose to
also a
believe so.
choice. I choose to believe
Yeah.
so. I
Because if
choose
you
to
if you
believe
make
so.
that choice, if you make that choice and say I am choosing, then you sort of walk through the world a little bit differently.
Yes.
You sort of hang on to things a little differently. You
Hmm.
write the texts in your head a little differently. You
Yeah.
you narrate you narrate your life a little bit differently.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like we're
Yeah.
all narrating these stories, and we can
Yeah.
narrate all this in ways that looks like, oh well, war of no choice, or
No, there's
malasot, this is the way it is, it's inevitable, and
no,
all of
no,
that.
no.
Or you can narrate it differently, and you could say, I choose to hang on to the belief that there's light here, that there are
Mhm.
people who have light here, and I'm hanging on to that. It's like you say, it's a choice, it's an action. That
It's a
hope is an
choice. It's
action.
an action, and it's an act of resistance. I really
Resistance.
persist in that terms because I
Mm,
feel people feel they cannot. There's nothing they can do. No, unless it is like violence resistance. And no, there's so much we can do without getting to violence.
yeah,
So much. Like
yeah.
violence shouldn't be even an option anywhere,
Mm,
not
right.
in on any side,
Yeah,
anywhere
yeah.
in the world. And I
I
find
agree.
that if we know that, and we know that, but we're taking the excuse and we're not taking responsibility for this. Oh, I didn't, he started. I mean, like you said, even with kids. Oh, I hit him because he hit me first. No, no.
Yeah,
Even if he
yeah,
hit you, you can choose actually not to engage in that.
yeah.
And then you
And
show.
I feel like we've been so deeply socialized into
Hmm.
excusing the violence in some cases. Like, can I tell you a
Yes.
little story but from what happened
Yeah, sure.
today? So I can't even remember which attack it was. There are so many, but there was a headline today in the Israeli media about Israel's being criticized for attacking I think a hospital maybe,
Hmm.
where 15 people were killed in this bombing. And so Israel's being, condemned for doing this, and I think, including children, right? Children, and so Israel's response is, well, there was a terrorist in there. Okay, so I was really thinking to myself, we're so used to this idea that, oh, I mean, I say Israel, and people consuming Israeli media, that, oh, if someone is labeled terrorist, as soon as they get that label, whether or not we know it's true, we have no idea if it's true or not. We don't even know what terrorist means, but then it's okay for Israel to then go and bomb a hospital. And then it's
Hmm.
okay if like everybody around is also killed. Like that was the implication from Israel's response. Was the
Yeah.
implication was like, oh, well, there's someone in the middle there that we determined was guilty and deserved to die, and therefore we're going to do whatever we feel like doing, and however many people will die, like malasot kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
you can't do anything about it. And I was thinking to myself, how long I've been hearing that kind of excuse. I mean,
Hmm.
decades. Okay,
Hmm.
like
Yeah.
decades I've been hearing that line that like Israel says, well, we discovered that there's someone there that deserves to die. Therefore, we're going to kill whoever else is around there. And the world should understand. And if you don't understand, then the world is just anti-Israel and anti-Semitic and all those things. And I'm thinking to myself, we've all been like socialized from this
Hmm.
into thinking that there are times when it's okay for us to randomly kill dozens of innocent people. Like, how is that ever okay? And I was just looking at that and I just like, I can't. No, 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 no. I need to just like keep talking back to this. I need to keep screaming back at this in any way that I can because all of these excuses we have to like say. When I say we, I mean like Israel and Israelis. We need to stop thinking that there is a time when this is okay. It is
We
just
need to
not okay.
dismantle the narrative. That's what I call it. We need to
Dismantle the narrative. I love
dismantle
that.
the, yeah, we need to dismantle the narrative. And I would say it's not just Israeli, it's Israeli and Jewish people. Because there's such a sense, and I wouldn't put all Israeli and all Jewish people in the same box, because I think there are people in Israel and in the Jewish population around the world that have been dismantling the narrative and have been standing out in their discourse. But I think that there is this narrative is being hitchhiked even by people that are not Jewish or
Hijacked.
Israeli, like
Yeah, hijacked.
Germany,
Yeah.
like
Mm,
yeah, and so it's really interesting also to see how we build a whole culture of violence
mm,
that is normalized, not only here, everywhere. And I go back to what we spoke about earlier, which is like, where did this nurturing of our relationship go? Where
mm,
is, like, if we look at all the ritual, where is this connection to Mother Earth? Where is
mm.
this connection to the environment? Like, we
Right.
have, when we look at, like, what are the issues that the UN are dealing with? Climate change, child soldier, violence against women, conflict, like all of this stuff. If we look back and we're like, what did people before dealt with? Before religion? What were we busy with? And I'm saying it because I'm like listening to an audiobook that speaks specifically on that period.
Mm,
And people were taking care of the land, taking care of the relationship in their family, taking care of the relationship in the tribe. And it's
mm,
not about like idealizing the time before and the time now. It's just like, if we notice, I live in Costa Rica with my family, I have beautiful two boys, with my beautiful husband. We have a land that we cultivate. We can, like, this morning I was doing the exercise, I was looking at the trees and I'm like, oh, we have some mangoes and there's pineapple that are going to be ready. There's cacao and katuk and like all these different things. And I thought of like, wow, in Palestine, that's what people right now and in Israel as well are longing for.
mhm,
It's like, when are we going to harvest the,
mm,
what happened to the harvest of the olive trees? What happened to
mm,
the harvest of what Mother Nature give us so abundantly, and that
mm.
some human, and I say some human, are devastating, are killing without distinction. What
Yeah.
happened to that? And so when you have a whole culture that is based on that, on this security, on this defense, on this, like, we have to kill because they might kill us, then you actually kill that culture. You kill it
Mm,
from within. And that's what Israel is doing right now. It's been
yeah.
killing the Israeli from within. I was
Mm,
reading yesterday an article, I don't know where that was published, but how bad the economic situation in Israel is, that
yeah.
nobody's speaking about, because everybody's busy with what's happening in Gaza and the West Bank and
Yeah.
what Bibi Netanyahu is selling as a story. But
Mhm,
people don't realize that he is bringing Israel to the verge of destruction. And like, every, in every civilization, we've had that. We've had huge civilization that were very successful, that out of the blue they sank. And this will happen as well. And if we don't wake up together, understanding that this is about humanity as one, this is about our civilization. This is not just a story of like, we're going to kill them because otherwise they're going to kill us.
mm.
We need to drop that story
Yeah.
and come and co-create together a story of love and
Mm,
connection and belonging and nurturing, and see how can we together plant trees in the West Bank. How can we together make sure and go harvest some of the fruit that are coming
mm,
out? How can we go, like, eat from the food, from food from the land to the table? How can we do that together? Because there's so many initiatives like that existing right now
mhm.
around agriculture, around
Yeah.
regeneration. And so
Yeah.
can we create a regenerative culture
Yeah.
rather than, we discuss it
It's like
around
it's
like,
like what Naveen said also, by the way. Another thing that Naveen said that
yeah.
really spoke to me, and she said that in Ireland they
Hmm.
invest in peace, that
Hmm.
they have budgets, right? They have national budgets that are for the purpose of investing in peace. And she said something like, I don't know, it's like $40 or $50 per
Yeah,
year per person invested just in peace, whereas the exact
crazy.
kind of
as here in Israel, it would be like 50 cents or something. I'm getting the numbers wrong, okay? But
I
that was the effect. That was the
cents would
effect.
be good. I don't think they even have 50 cents.
But see, it reminds me of I was once on this conference. Actually, it was a conference I was in Ireland. Like in 2018, I was in Ireland on this leadership conference, and I met these super interesting women who had been really involved in the reconciliation, and it was
Hmm.
really life changing for me, that experience. So one of the things that somebody in that group got up and said, you know what we need here? Here in Israel, an Israeli got up and spoke. We need a ministry of peace. That's what she
Yes.
said. We have a ministry of defense, right? The ministry of
Yes.
defense takes over the entire budget. And what happens if instead of a ministry of war, effectively, we had a ministry of
Of
peace,
peace. That's
where we were
beautiful.
investing in this, in what you're describing, in all of these efforts? There are
Hmm.
so many of these efforts, 170 organizations in ALMEP, all of these
Hmm.
efforts to create a different reality. What if we raised that vision and raised those
Hmm.
activities with actual, real investment, and with its own ministry, with its own vision, with its own media, with its own, like all of it.
Hmm.
So,
It Costa Rica doesn't have an army. Like what
yes,
I'm
I
talking
remember
about
that.
is
Yes.
really, I'm talking from a lived experience. I've been living here for 12 years, and there's so many Israelis that uh, are living here and came specifically after October 7th.
Yeah.
And Costa Rica invests all her defense money in regeneration, in really in culture, in agriculture. And the fact that there's no army works on the field, and I think that's what I'm interested in, and that's what peace activation is also, is about the field, because I think that when we are in a field of war, war begets war, violence begets
Yeah.
violence. And
Yeah.
so when we are in a field where we are constantly in terror and scared, any action would scare me. But if I'm in a field where I know there's no such thing as an army, and there's no this Kalashnikov all around me when I go to the supermarket, or I go to
Yeah.
the coffees, or take the bus. I mean, like, this is so normalized. Violence is so normalized in our society that we don't realize that we're actually prepared. That's why it doesn't. And that's why I think that's why it doesn't transform, because it requires a deep societal transformation
Mm.
around what we have been normalizing since 1948, if not
Mm.
before. And I think Costa Rica is a great example. Ireland is a great example. Belgium is a great example in terms of
Mm.
like two communities with two different languages living together
Yeah.
in peace. Even if there are challenges, I think people
Yeah.
mistake peace with like peaceful or harmony. But
Yeah.
I don't think the purpose is to live in harmony. I think the purpose is to live non-violently and to
Mm.
live with respect to the other person's radically
Right.
different.
The
And if I,
interview I did with the women from 1325, from Forum 1325, where
yes,
we interviewed Dr. Sharon Gordon and Dr.
mhm,
Tamara Levy Daphne, that's what Forum 1325 is doing, right? They're trying to
yes.
advance all these solutions.
Mhm.
And one of the things that we talked about a lot was what you just said about how many countries have created all kinds of solutions, even with their multicultural backgrounds and even
Mhm.
conflicting backgrounds. And
Exactly.
another thing that you hear a lot in this region is you hear people saying, like, where it's different here. It's
Yeah,
different here. It's different here because you don't
uh,
understand our conflict. Our conflict is
of course.
harder.
It's too
And it's like
complex.
Ireland. It's too
Yeah,
complex. Like,
it's too
really? This is
complex.
higher
No,
than Ireland? If they could do it
no,
in Ireland, they could do it here.
yeah,
Really? We think we're unique? We think we're
no,
unique that we have
no,
people in conflict here? It's like,
yeah.
we're the only
You know,
ones?
I so love that you said that, because I think that's part of the reason why I left the Middle East conflict 25 years ago and started working only on other conflicts.
Mhm.
I worked on 22 conflicts around the world, in Africa, Southeast Asia, and elsewhere, because I was like, I want to know what is special about this Middle East conflict or our own conflict, that we can solve it. And what I come to the conclusion, it's not that it's unique, it's not that it's complicated, it's not that it's complex, it's that there's no willingness to solve it, because it answered the interest of other superpower, including powers in Israel and in Palestine. Otherwise, this is really easy, because we actually are similar in so many ways. We've seen through the podcast how many love there is between some of the people, and so I
Yeah.
don't think it's an issue of like complicated, complex, etc. I think there's a power dynamic, There's structural violence. There's systems that are in place to oppress another people and oppress people within Israel. And like the whole system is
and
irrigated around that.
patriarchy, by the
And
way, a lot.
mainly patriarchy.
Mm,
That's what justifies. And so
yeah.
I think that Mary needs to come back. or the Messiah is going to be, Mashiach יבוא, Mashiach בעצם היא כבר באה, היא תבוא.
We are the Mashiach. It's us. Maybe the Mashiach is all the women. The women
it's all
bring
the feminine. I wouldn't say just women, because we have lost as women. Some women have actually lost the feminine as well. And even if they have the sex of women, the way they act is purely masculine and violent. So I wouldn't focus it on women, because I've seen women in action as well. But what I would say is the feminine in women and men. The feminine needs to come back, because you know what? Men are suffering as well. I've spoken with soldiers that are traumatized with what's happening, that have left and lost their soul because of what they think they're obliged to do for their country. And so I wouldn't just put women up front. I would put women and men, because we are all suffering. And I wouldn't put just like Palestinian or Israel. It's like we are all suffering what's happening right now, whether we are in Palestine, in Israel, or elsewhere. And it's time to stop this system of oppression and this occupation of the minds and of the land, and really listen to the land. What does the land want? What does the land want? And you know what? The land wants regeneration, wants water, she wants nurturing, she wants her daughter and brothers and sisters to be living in peace. I think that's what
Amen.
Inshallah.
Eva, inshallah. It's always great talking with you, Eva. I love that we always find ways to find our core shared values. I feel like we, at our core, we have, we share this belief, the hope, the vision, and I'm so grateful for that. I'm so grateful for that, Eva.
Grateful for you too, Elana. Always. Thank you.
Okay, to be continued one way or another, as we're figuring it out as we go.
Absolutely. Have a beautiful evening.
You too, Eva.
Bye-bye. Ciao, ciao.
You've been listening to the podcast Women Ending War. If you like this, please subscribe, share, like, and comment. Links to our channels on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple are below. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Substack. In peace, salam, and shalom.